the story that I like to share is one that is about the complexity of human relationships and for us as human beings. And it came from my experience in aged care as I was a manager in an aged care facility. So the story I'm going to go into involves chickens. And
Okay.
so it reached a certain stage when the couple, Mr. and Mrs. Song, wishes to have a chicken coop in their house, in their retirement village house. The most obvious thing to me, as I reflect on this episode and many episodes in aged care and in our society and the today and any time in the past and in families, in communities, is that there are emotions just swirling through the whole scene.
Welcome to Miraculous Transformations, conversations about powerful practices that create powerful transformations. Join me as I delve into stories of change and explore the tools and practices that have helped people navigate their paths. You might just find some you'd like to try yourself.
Okay, well, thanks, Katie. Thanks for inviting me. My name is Leong Hiew. I have quite a variety in my history. I started off my career as a computer scientist, and I was doing research in AI and in early stages of the internet and email and World Wide Web and technologies like that. And through a very varied career, I've moved from a computer scientist, a lecturer at Murdoch University and the University of Western Australia, then to research in hospital in an area called bioinformatics, then into health research, and then starting a aged care service of my own in Australia and then in China, and leading me to today where I am. I spend my time, half my time is still on aged care. I do private consulting on aged care. And I also have a company that promotes creating resources for young people to thrive in today's very online and very hyper-connected world. So that is a quick rundown on my history. I tell people that the uh, the way that I think about my life is that I like to take the scenic route to destinations, and
Right.
that to me is the best way to describe me.
Thank you. Thank you for introducing yourself and thank you for being here with me. You definitely have an interesting sounding journey so far, so I'm excited to talk to you more and hear what you're going
Wow.
to share.
Right. Okay. So, as I understand it, the through your invitation, the series that you're doing is about transformations, and I've thought a lot about the different stories. Certainly, episodes. There are many episodes in my history that I could where I have undergone transformation, and having said that, every moment is an opportunity to transform, and so I usually reflect and I use those opportunities into order to transform in ways that I believe is meaningful and useful. And but the story that I like to share is one that is about the complexity of human relationships and for us as human beings. And it came from my experience in aged care as I was a manager in an aged care facility. And because of the complexity of this story I'm about to tell, I've tried in past to think of how I would relate it in a 5 minute video or something that I would post myself. But I find that a lot of the nuance of the story doesn't come out. So I'm
Right.
hoping that by having this conversation with you, that you can tell the story, or we can tell the story together a lot better than just me, reciting a story. So I'll start by talking about aged care in Australia. So in Australia, we have quite a sophisticated aged care system and there are many parts to it. But the main part that's relevant to the story is that we start off by a person aging and reaching about the age of 55 when the aged care system starts coming into place. So the government have a regulated and subsidized system where as you start to have needs around at 55, you start to have things like a retirement village. And so that's when you still are relatively independent. You can take care of yourself, but you start to want an accommodation that is perhaps with other people that are of similar age, that's built in ways that's easier for services to be provided. You know, long hallways. There are ramps to every part of the house. Um, and it's near services. So things like that. So that's a retirement village. You're still relatively independent. Now, the moving on from that, when you do are no longer independent and you require somebody for 24 hours, then we have these facilities that is called residential aged care, and that in old language, that's the nursing home. But
Okay.
these days, there's a whole variety of residential aged care or nursing home options available in Australia. So that's when you require 24-hour care, 24-hour
Mm.
attention. And there is staff that's responsible for everything from your meals to your laundry to your medication and there are doctors that visits. So it's these two aspects of aged care that is where my story is founded on. So I'm going to talk about a time when I was a manager at an organization that had its retirement village and its residential aged care co-located, so side by
Okay.
side. And the reason for doing that is rare for people to do that. But one of the advantages of having that is that if you have a family, then you can move into retirement village as your needs rises, and then as
Mm.
your needs rises even further, then you will move into the aged care facility,
Okay.
and that's the advantage, right? So just a side comment, Australia then also have a lot of other types of services like home care for people within the community and
Mm.
hospital transition care, transition from hospital to home or to aged care facility and so on. But I'll just focus on this facility I was at, where I was the operations manager, and we had an aged care retirement village and a residential aged care facility. So the family that I'll talk about, I'll change their names and some little bits of details like gender or and other details to protect their privacy.
Okay.
But the essential thing that going to talk about is very common in a lot of families and in a lot of facilities and retirement village. So this family, the Song family, they is a husband and wife who are aging, and they move into the retirement village to start off with. And as they age, the husband, Mr. Song, got to a stage where he needed 24-hour care. So he moved into the residential aged care facility, but the wife kept stayed in the house. And it's only one, it's just across the road. So although they were spending their nights in different rooms, what they were able to do was that during the day, the husband, Mr. Song, could still go home to their
Mm.
retirement village home just across the road from the facility, and effectively have a much smoother transition than what a lot of families experience when one half of the couple have to move to a higher care needs than the other.
Mm.
So the couple also have a son. Now the son does not stay in the retirement village, obviously, and so he lives in what we call the community, just normal, unregulated, unsubsidized
Okay.
facility. So now the both of the couple are very high achieving people, are very proud of their achievement. The woman is a writer and has written for newspapers and has a lot of writing in her past and very highly respected for her writing. The man is an engineer, and so he has a successful engineering career. The son is also very successful, has a high position in the corporate world, and has built himself a successful career in there. That is the scene that we have now in residential aged care for this family. Just like for a lot of other families, as health deteriorates, a lot of problems start start to
Mm.
arise, and people, and they start to lose the choices that they wish they had. That if there is a family event, they wish that they can hold a party like normal, that they can eat all
Yeah.
types of food and they can invite anybody, and they can have it at any hour. So these normal day-to-day routine, the choices available to them became different. And I'll use the word different because there's alternate ways of doing it that can fit them. But when you spend a lifetime being used to these ways of doing things, it's very hard to change.
Mm.
And the story I'm going to go into involves chickens. And
Okay.
so it reached a certain stage when the couple, Mr. and Mrs. Song, wishes to have a chicken coop in their house, in their retirement village house.
Okay.
And that is not something that within our community, retirement village or residential aged care, that's very common. A lot of families have pets, cats and dogs,
Right.
the birds, even some birds. But having a chicken coop is a different level because of the hygiene issues that's involved, the amount
Oh.
of maintenance that you need to do, and also they want a chicken coop because they wanted to have fresh eggs for themselves. And so that again impacts on diet.
Mm.
So, but for us in the management, we allow them to have it because and we need to do a lot of work in order to ensure that it's going to be workable in terms of health and in terms of routine. But we let them do it. And so a lot of problems then is created by the chicken coop. The
Mm.
things that I mentioned, that it needed a lot of attention in order to keep the chicken coop healthy. But the way that they knew how to keep chickens, China, where they were from, is quite different from the standards that Australia have. So the Mr. Song, who is now needs 24-hour attention because he's in the aged care facility, would go home and he would actually clean out the chicken coop himself.
Okay.
And be exposed to everything that's within the chicken coop, and the mobility issues that's involved with trying to get the cage open and then pulling out rugs and then scrubbing them, and so there was a lot of problems with that. The neighbors were all complaining because of the
Oh.
cleanliness of the chicken coop, the pests that it would attract, the
Mm.
sounds that they would make. And through the problems that were created, then there were a lot of tension with between the Mr. and Mrs. Song, who had different ideas about how to maintain it. There were different views between the couple and management as to how to do it. There was different needs that the couple had as they were aging to have their son involved with the maintenance of this chicken coop. And as more tensions arise between the couple and with the couple and the neighbors and between the couple and the staff and management, the son had to be the person that became the liaison person
Mm.
and start to deal with these problems that arose. So the attention for the whole community, including the service providers, the staff, the community members with neighbors, the people in the facility, everybody was focused on the chickens, the chicken coop, because of the issues and the tensions that it arose. And so I, as the operations manager, so the role that I have is an operations one. It's about the catering, the cleaning, the IT. So there is a director of nursing who deals with the care issues.
Mm. Okay.
But but as it evolved, through my years in aged care, I'm usually the one that gets brought in when there's a complex issue involving a lot of relationships. And I'll talk a bit later about how I ended up in that role. But usually they will bring me in because there are just so many pieces involved in this, and it's not clear what the right solution is. And So what it requires is to problem solve this. This very
Right. Yeah.
complex issue, and how do we get different people to do what we need them to do? What do we need to put in place, and what changes actually needs to be made, short term and long term, and so on and so forth. So very common um, problem solving procedures that we have in aging and the aged care services. So I'll talk about then now about this problem, this situation. And
Okay.
why this situation occurred to me to talk to you about, because of how complex it is. And you and I could be talking for the next few hours about the details of all this, and you probably will pick out things that you can highlight in your series if we do that. But I want to talk about the most obvious thing to me as I reflect on this episode and many episodes in aged care and in our society and the today and any time in the past and in families, in communities, is that there are emotions that swirling through the whole scene.
Mm.
The is creating stress for certainly for Mr. and Mrs. Song. So now their emotions is played out between the two of them. Then it gets played out with the neighbors. It gets played out with the staff that shows up to try and clean their house. It shows up with the doctor that is trying to get them to have their medication. It shows up when I go and talk to them. It plays out in the relationship with the son, who is trying to help them to resolve all of that while trying to maintain a life of his own. So there are these emotions, and these emotions have to go somewhere.
Mm.
And it is as I deal with issues like this one, what becomes clear to me is that it's really um, assessing and being aware of where all these emotions are going. That more than anything else tells me the how it's going to play out. So
Right.
that's one thing. The second thing involved in this are roles that the family, through the way that they have grown and evolved, have very specific roles. Very traditional Chinese families certainly have that, but most
Okay.
of us have that. That
Mm.
that and is that pattern of communication that is based on their roles that again determines how a situation like this actually plays out, and and some of those roles are cultural, some of those roles are family, some of those roles are gender, some of those roles are just very specific with these particular three individuals. But those roles are very set, and and a lot of times we try to define, well, this is the perfect solution, but the
Mm.
solutions don't fit because that's not the role that all of them take. That a lot of times with communication, that something that's said, if I say something to Mr. Song, is different from if the son says the same
Oh,
thing
totally.
to the family, because we have established roles. So what I ended up doing, the parts of this very complex scene that I got involved with, is that I started to sit with them to first of all get everyone to be able to tell their side of the story. And this is where what I just mentioned before, that if the son had this conversation with Mr. Song or Mrs. Song, it would be quite different. But me as a relative outsider coming in and asking, so one day I went to see Mrs. Song, and then it was within the house, and so I just sat, and she was making dumplings. And so she offered me the dumplings, and we started to have this meal over dumplings. And so the conversation was about dumplings for, I don't remember for how long, but 20 minutes, half an hour. It was all about the dumplings. And through the dumplings, she started to talk about her life, and she started to talk about her writing, and she started to show me passages that she's currently writing for a community newspaper. And from then it evolved to her talking about a staff that is does that's really good, and does a lot for her and her husband. And then she talked about things that she didn't like about that staff. And from then on, then so after a long time, then we started talking about the chickens. But by that time, the emotions have been between us have had a chance to go somewhere. And
Mm-hmm.
she's able to fulfill that role because the reason she's telling me about that staff is that she wanted to constructively uh, give her point of view. And she's already thought out about that. I want to start off with saying something positive first. And and you can see from her, very educated background and the way she writes that she thinks like that. And she has a
Okay.
chance now to do that rather than being confronted with the question, what are we going to do about the chickens? Right? Which is
Right.
that does not fit her role, it's not where her emotions are. And so we talked about that, and at the end of that conversation, the we there wasn't much. There was a lot of things that we've decided on about her dumplings, about sharing with the community, and about the newspaper piece that she was doing. But in terms of the chicken issue, we decided that I was going to have another conversation with the staff, and I would take her views back and record it within our the information system that we have for our residents. Um, so not much came out of that, but those actions that's really about the chicken, there were little bits in that meeting. There was another meeting that I had with the son where we spoke about his work to start off with. And again, very long conversation about that. And then that slowly segue, one bit at a time. And then we spoke about the chickens. And the outcomes about the chickens again is very small. And so the solution for the chicken was done a little bit at a time while all
Okay.
these other things were happening surrounding emotions and surrounding roles. So in the end, the actual actions that we took about the chickens were minimal,
Okay.
but the issue died down, not just because of what I did, but because of what everybody else did. And reflecting on that, and if I had to write how was the problem solved, I'll be able to link, those bits together and say we did this
Right.
and we did this. But as I'm telling the story, the solution wasn't solved that way. The solution was solved through other means. Um, and so I'll go back then now to the point. Why do the my colleague, the director of nursing, always brings me into this situation? Is that for some reason I like being in this very complex environment where a lot of emotions are swirling, and to let the emotions rise, and I have some capacity to absorb some of it
Oh,
without
wow.
very confrontational reaction to it. I can't say that that always works. As a human being, I will react to certain situations, especially if
Right.
it's not about me. It really is about me or my family and things like that. But one of the key roles of a external service provider is to provide that you're not in the middle of all of that, and you're able to act as, well, middle person, the person that saves face for other people, and
Mm.
and so I found a lot of my transformation has been to recognize that there's something about me being an outsider and being able to be told a lot of these things that are very uh, um, confrontational to people that are very directly involved in it, and to then not react to it and recognize that it's part of a process and it's part of something that people are feeling, and that's how and it's a lot of it based on their roles, and and therefore to allow solutions to come not from services or products or technology, which is what we are trying a lot to do, especially today because technology is so prevalent.
Mm.
They play a part, they're very important, but the solutions are from relationships, they're from compassion, they're from the time uh, and love. So So those are the ones that actually solve the problem. And if we focus on services and technology or process or procedures, they get in the way of these other things that's very hard to define, but are actually the ones that solve the problem.
Hmm.
And so, yeah. So this chicken story I had for a lot of years, and I very uh, regularly review it to first of all see how complex situation arise and de-escalates, but more than anything else about what is my role in there, and to recognize with humility that my role is very minimal. First is not to make things worse, but to actually have a role to facilitate the emotions, for it
Yeah.
to have somewhere to go.
It sounds like your role is to hold space and to make somebody feel heard and acknowledged. And I think you really, you know, hit the nail on the head there when you said that a lot of times that is what it takes to solve a problem. It's just for everyone to feel like their perspective is being heard and acknowledged. And then people soften very quickly once they
Mm.
feel understood, or that's my
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, that's a really interesting thing. A couple of days ago, I saw a video of a workshop, of a corporate workshop where this facilitator was trying to get the audience to understand this concept. So what that video has is that he had an audience member come up to the front, and without any instruction, he asked this audience member to help him with things, and then he just started walking, and then the other audience member started walking with him, so up and down a couple of times, and then he asked the audience member to stop, and then without saying anything, he just asked the audience member to put out his two fists, and he started pushing against those two fists, and the audience member quite naturally then just resisted and held back. And so at the end of that, he asked everyone, did he have any instructions for this other audience member? And they said no. And he pointed out to them how when he started just walking, and they're walking alongside each other, the person quite naturally just walks alongside you. But when you start pushing
They
against
push
somebody,
against you.
yeah, it pushes against you. Yes.
A lot of what you said, I connect with having a background as a classroom teacher.
Mm,
Because parents constantly would be asking me to, will you tell my child blah, 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 blah? Because when I say it, they won't do it. But when you say it, then it becomes like the law of the land and the house. So,
yes.
and so
Yes.
it's just that, and it also makes me think, years ago, my mom was having I can't remember what it was, but I kept telling her, Mom, you need to drink more water.
Right.
That like you're dehydrated, you need to drink more water. And she was resistant for some reason, not to drinking more, but to drinking water. And
Yeah.
then like a couple months later, she tells me that her trainer at the gym, also named Katie, told her she needs to drink more water. And so she's been drinking more water. And I was like, imagine that.
Okay. Yes, I think that I find that a lot in aged care because it's about complex family dynamics. And yeah, my colleague Clarice, who's the director of nursing, that I worked with. So what she says, 90% of aged care is about family dynamics. So then the rest of it is the health issues and all of that, and the and I find that to be very, very accurate because, you look at any particular situation, most of the things that are happening are these things that, we cannot control. It's messy, but it's real and it's happening to people. And and I thought of in the past, how do we create structured training for staff so that they focus on these things and actually have the skills in order to deal with it. And I
Yeah, that's
found, yeah, and I find though that again, and coming from my computing background, where you think, if we know how to solve it, then we should be able to automate it. And then, through 30 years of doing that, I realized, no, you can't and that's why I don't think AI will take us very far, because we cannot articulate how these problems and these episodes and these situations, we can't get to the essence of it. You experience it and you relate and you go
Oh,
through
interesting.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has to, it's
So,
that idea of like you just have to go through
mm,
it. I'm really fascinated by the fact that this is what you're talking about, and I'll just share why. Because,
okay.
I live my life where I'm always on the lookout for synchronicities, and I use synchronicities to guide me and to help me make decisions and show me what's next. And I think it's really fascinating that you're talking about this right now, because this is a total synchronicity. Because as I shared at the beginning of our conversation, my partner David and I are in California right now, living at his mom's house. And we
Right.
are providing aged care because her husband passed away recently and she can't take care of herself fully on her own right now. And they are working on, he and his siblings are working on figuring out where she's going to live and where she's going to go next. But until then, she needs someone to take care of her. And so
Yeah.
we're doing that right now. And at the same time, over on the East Coast of the United States, my aunt, my mom's sister, just had a stroke, and she just moved into an assisted living place, which is what you were just talking about. Like the husband moved across the street. It's like that. It's not
Yeah.
actually, I guess it's a step in between because it's not a full nursing home, but it is assisted living. And she needs a lot of care. And my mom lives 500 miles away. And we just went there to visit. And both of these situations have unfolded simultaneously. And it has been challenging and interesting and fascinating. And I think it's so interesting that you're now coming with this story and talking about this family dynamic thing. As this all started to unfold, I said to my parents, the next time I visit, I want to talk about a lot of these things because I saw exactly what you're saying, that most of the things that were going on had to do with the dynamic that had been established between the couple and between the kids and the parents years and years and years ago. And
Yeah.
it's playing out now in these decisions that are getting made about healthcare and about who's going to do what. And and so when I went to Florida just a couple weeks ago, I was like, okay, we need to talk about these things. Like while we're all, like we have a dynamic and how is that going to play out when, if something happens and you need decisions made? Do
Yeah.
I make them? Do you want daddy, do you want mom to make them? Like, do you want us
Yeah.
to do this together? Like, what are the dynamics that we want to be play in place? And let's be realistic about the dynamics that we have
Yeah.
now with each other and how that's going to impact the future. And so I definitely see what you're saying in terms of all of that. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and what you say also prompts me to think about first of all, to think about, why did I choose this story as opposed to others? But I think the thing, I could have chosen a lot of other stories, and maybe because you as a human being can see the link, and it may be that whatever story I give, you have seen that synchronicity,
Yeah.
and I think, again, just to refer to it, that's why I don't think AI will take us very far, because these are the really amazing things that human can do that is not articulated yet, that
Mhm.
we will find that is how real things get done. But you now prompt me to think about my own family, and my dad passed away 6 years ago. My mom is still living in Malaysia in her own house, and so she's 80, is it 89? But she's
Wow.
quite aged. But my sister and my brothers who are living in Malaysia has a lot to do with providing her with the necessary house, and also the help for her to keep living in her own house. But is so. when I talk about the things that I've just talked about, and then and you said what you said, you and I have ways of thinking that are, in this sense, similar. We do want to just we want to recognize that there are dynamics happening and there are things happening, and having conversation is useful, and I think we should all do it. At the same time, also is that the all the things that I'm capable of helping my mom with, for instance, right now, she won't listen to me. And
Yeah.
and I've gone through many years of conflict thinking I can do this. How do I, manage or control things so that it happens? I gone through while my dad was still alive. We'd go and visit every facility and accommodation and services possible just so that we can talk to these providers and get them to understand it, and then we have a conversation. But every time we visit that, when we get home and I wanted to have a big conversation, they've seen what they needed to see, and it's time to have dinner, or the
Yeah.
grandchildren is coming. And so there is so we are part of the dynamics, and
Right. Totally.
and and the way we see things other people doesn't necessarily agree with, and that's the way we we
Well,
have to
and
live with.
yeah, and when you were talking about like when you're talking about the emotions and,
Mm,
giving space for emotions having somewhere to go, to me that I believe you said that that was the transformation for you was understanding through that process was understanding that that is what's at play here. And I feel like as a mindfulness coach and teacher,
wow.
and then with a background as an elementary school teacher, that is something I've spent a lot of my career focusing on is this process of acknowledging emotions, allowing emotions, and understanding where they come from and giving them a healthy place to go. And so I think
Yeah.
that I find that there's not that we don't have the stamina built up for
Mm,
patience in conversation and to let
yeah.
things unfold. And that's something it sounds like that you have and that I have, but not everybody necessarily has or is even interested in
Yeah.
cultivating, and that's okay, but it does create a challenge when it comes to problem solving together because like you, I want to like um, go through all of the go down all the pathways and the roads and let everybody express and like and be okay with all the emotions are okay and then we'll come to a solution together and
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, we need to find our tribe so that we get to express our emotions, and in these cases, there are frustrations within our personal lives also. The Not only frustration, some of it is a celebration of the very deep connections that we have, and to have gratitude for those things that you and I share, and a lot of people share. The and so to me, yeah, the what I recognize is that transformation that comes from recognizing and being conscious and actively practicing being able to see them, and to sit and to let it go, and then and what do we do with it as we um, have a way in order to manage a lot of these emotions is certainly a very big transformation for me. It's certainly something that I try to cultivate in my children, and I think it's a message worth spreading. So mindfulness, I think, is quite a key solution for
Mhm.
a lot of people. And I use different languages. So I've done a lot of mindfulness practice, and these days I still do. My meditation in the evenings, and um, the and what I have come to do a lot of is to describe them in a lot of different ways. So one of the key videos I've had in the past is to describe the way that I see it, which is that I'm actually in a river, and there's a lot of and I don't try to fight where the flow of the river is. I need to be able to surface and breathe, but it's a joy to be, in this turbulent waters, and seeing, leaves flow by, and feeling, the water against my body, and so what I need to do is ensure that, I don't lose total control over this, where, then I fall over a waterfall or something like that that could kill me. But that's actually quite easy to do, but you can't fight it.
Right.
And so I use this river metaphor to describe the way that I immerse myself in my life. So that's a different metaphor from the ones that I was trained with, which is that you sit beside the river and you watch it flow. And I
Mm.
found that the metaphor of being in the river to be a lot more accurate reflection of how I see myself, and a lot more useful for me to determine, yeah, I actually need to, you know, redirect the way I go in, as the river
I like
flows.
that shift of
Mm.
going with the flow versus
Mm.
like detaching from it and
Yeah.
letting it flow, like letting things go or letting things be. But you're actually, I mean, because we are all in the flow of life together. And,
Mm.
one of the things that I think I have come to through this sort of mindset shift that I've had over the years when it comes to adopting a meditation and a mindfulness practice, one of the things that has surfaced is this ability to look for the gifts in hard situations. And
Mm.
even if I can't pick out what they are right in the moment, I trust and I know that they will surface and that I will look back and go like, wow, I learned so much from that situation, or I transformed in this way, or this came from that situation, this certain piece of learning or whatever it is. And so I just automatically, I mean, like right now, this situation of being here in California is new. And so we have a lot of adjustment going on. And we're both going like, wow, this is hard. It's different. We went from being nomadic and having a lot of agency over what we're doing to not for a little while. And we feel blessed to have the time and space to be able to be of service in that way to his mother. And also, it's hard. And so we just, every night, we keep going, like, I know there's gifts. I know there's learning. Like,
Yeah.
we're learning so
Yeah.
much. I'm so excited to figure out what
Yeah.
it's going to be.
Yeah. Uh, and all this comes back to mindfulness as in a sense, a solution. I don't think that's a really good word, but I'll use the word as a solution, because a few days ago I was trying to work out in my head how to convey this message that there's gratitude in everything. But the natural thing to say is that, well, is there gratitude in abuse or trauma, or
Mm,
huge amounts of suffering? And so it is, in a sense, the way we use our language and the way we describe it, because there will be no situation, well, not in my world, where you would say, I'm grateful that somebody got abused. Right? So
yeah,
that just is, it's unimaginable. But the thing that we want to be able to do is that in any one of those situations, because gratitude is such a powerful tool, and being mindful of our situation is such a powerful tool, to recognize that, if there's growth, in that, if
mhm,
you get support from other people, if you're able to learn certain things from it, then those are the things to be grateful for.
right.
And so this question, so is again, it's a rabbit hole to when we start defining things. What is gratitude, and is there gratitude in everything? And that goes into the unhealthy black and white thinking, and perfectionism, and all those other aspects. But messaging, I find, is really important. A lot of my practice is on reframing, and so it
Yeah,
is that this exactly the same situation, exactly the same thing you're going to do, the but the if you think about it differently, then it makes a big difference. And yeah,
definitely.
mindfulness is a big part of
Yeah,
that.
and that's actually so when I teach mindfulness to children a lot, and I do one-on-one sessions with them, and we do A lot of the I teach it through the lens of social emotional learning. So
Yeah,
as a classroom teacher, we always had social emotional learning units that we had to teach throughout the year. And so I have that always that lens that I'm looking through. And so my mindfulness sessions a lot of times end up being more like something that a guidance counselor at school would
yeah,
do, but through, so it's really like social emotional learning through the lens of mindfulness. And
yeah.
and I always do reframing. I always teach the skill of reframing and what does that mean and how can that help you see a
Mhm.
situation differently and therefore not remain stuck. How can I move through
Yeah,
something because I'm able to reframe it and keep going?
yeah. The most interesting thing to me is that I believe you do a lot of things that's to educate to so that you let your audience know where they're going, and a lot of sense that's what I do as well. One thing that links in with what I've been talking about is that more and more I think about there are things that we can provide that's educational. Like skills that they can develop. This is how you do certain things. This is how you can practice. The the most difficult thing in terms of mindset change is the experience. And more I think about that if I just show up on social media in this little bit and in effect walking alongside somebody who is engaging with this, that is not just educational. It doesn't just trigger things that's in prefrontal cortex and all those thinking, the cognitive part. How do you support somebody emotionally without them being in therapy? That's a question that I think about a lot because I think about my family too. That how is it that I can support my children in that way, and is that available for somebody that's outside of your family or somebody outside of your close ones? So it's not really just about the information that we're providing. There is a channel called Healthy Gamer. So I don't know whether you know it. It's a psychiatrist,
Okay.
uh, Dr. K. Um, so he's done a lot of work in this, and if you look up, he has a lot of guides and a lot of things exactly about the things that we're talking about.
Okay.
So and one of the things that he said is that there's shown that somebody just watches the video of him having conversations about mental health, but having a conversation so it's actually healthy conversation. And over time, there's some effect, very minor effect, but there is effect in that. So you and I, regardless of the content that we talk about, if we talk about it in very civil ways and we recognize and then we acknowledge things, I see that has value to a person emotionally, and it allows somebody to dissipate perhaps some emotions that's been
It's modeling. I
well.
mean, you're modeling a
Yeah.
behavior. It's kind of like what you were talking about the guy on the stage with he started walking and the guy started walking with him. You're modeling a behavior with the hopes that the people around you will pick up on that and
Mm,
maybe apply some of those things in their life as well with other people or with themselves, which is kind of my thought behind these conversations is that
mm,
I want, to share these different perspectives and ways of thinking and ways of being in the world. And as people listen, they might say, like, oh, interesting. I haven't thought about thinking about something that way or doing something that way. Maybe I'll try that. Or, it's kind of like when you see a quote, an inspirational quote, and you just kind of and
yeah.
you put it in the back of your mind and you marinate in it and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, it starts to inform decisions.
The way that we engage in this the default network of within our brain that and when we focus, which has been the a lot of the drive from a very traditional education, is that you want to focus, you want to learn these things and you want to master it. The more you do that, the less you lose contact, lose the connections that's with the rest of your brain. That it's not actually in that state of being able to tap into what is salient in our lives and come up with the next set of thoughts. And so a lot of us moving towards being more creative and being more stress-free, a lot of it is that there is really powerful functional value to defocus and relax and so I wish I hope that we continue to learn more about these broader views of how the brain actually works and how it taps into emotions and is
Yeah,
emotions is different from thought? This that's still a very big question. Um, but what you had, right? So it's
I remembered.
have a right. Okay.
So when you're talking about, how to do these things when you're not, but it's not therapy. So that is something that I deal with a lot as a mindfulness coach because I'm not a therapist. I'm not a licensed therapist.
Mm,
And so I
yeah.
talk to parents a lot of times. I will say that to adults as well, but especially with parents, because I'm not working with the parent, I'm working with their child. I will just make sure they know, I'm not a licensed therapist, so we're not doing therapy. However, what we are doing is we're showing them different ways to navigate life like on their own. So I'm facilitating them going inward and figuring out what works best for them to
Yeah.
navigate a certain situation. And I give them tools, but I'm not necessarily trying to solve a problem for them. I'm giving them tools to try and solve it for themselves.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that
Yes.
that's a lot of times what ends up happening with different things that aren't therapy. And
Mm,
I guess I can't say that a therapist is there to solve your problems either. I think that they
yeah.
probably help you solve your own problems as well.
Yeah. This is to me the level of depth maybe there's something about therapy is an essential part to our the way we deal with our lives and ourselves. The But I see sort of a continuum between there's therapy, then there's uh, non-therapy but individual work, then there's group work. And what I see coming out now because of the availability of technology and networks is that like you and I, the message can go out to very large audience, a very small audience. We don't control that, but
Mhm.
potentially the larger creators have this message that goes out to everyone. So the question to me is that how do we extend group work that we understood in the past, including classrooms? How do you do that when you have an audience of 1,000 or 1 million or 1 billion? Because it's
Mhm.
quite different from how you would structure a group work of 20 people, and that's the space that I find most interesting. How do we influence, have positive influence when you don't control the audience, you don't know what they're doing, and you don't know their background, you haven't done any assessments, and so you
Right.
put a message out there. Is it beneficial? I'm pretty sure if we're conscious and intentional, it will be beneficial in some ways, but we don't know,
And you
and that's a
see
factor.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, and you see that in in social media when you see the variety of comments that get made on
yeah,
somebody's post. I was just looking at this woman who has a TikTok account and she's doing conscious parenting is what she
right,
talks about.
yeah,
And she gave this story about a situation that happened with one of her children. And I was
right,
sitting there going like, wow, this is such a great example of a way to communicate with your child. And I was like fascinated
yeah,
thinking like, oh, as a classroom teacher, like this is what I used to try and do to have these very explanatory conversations. And then I opened up the comments and she got
yes,
slammed. And I was like,
right,
what? And so I
yeah,
left a comment saying, you can this it's
yeah,
obvious like where the variety in our society comes from because there's so many different ways that people approach
yeah.
things. But
Yeah, I find that some of the videos I have that has a lot of viewers, that the comment section has a life of its own, and people are supporting each other in those comments that's totally invisible to us,
Uh-huh.
who created the original content, and that I find that is another area of fascination for me. That I believe most of the culture is defined there, invisible, and um, but again, there's just emotions swirling. An example, I created a very short video, a very quick one, where I get people to try and recognize their own value, and that was the point of my video. But as it got more and more people viewed it, you could see different type of comments, and the main one that I got out of it was that it was a chance for people to come on and say, I'm very stressed because I have no money. I can't find work. And especially then in Africa, there was a lot of people that were commenting that. And then other people would jump in and support each other in that. So when I look then
That's
at
beautiful.
my video, the video itself, it has some numbers to it, and but the real story of this video is in there. How
Mm.
this whole community and the emotions that swirls around that, and how people communicate. So it is fascinating. So uh, I wanted to use that to bring back to the point of what you're doing with this transformation series and also other things that you do in the channel. Just how important it is for it to be out there, and once it leaves your computer, it's out of your control. But I think it's important to for us to keep doing it
Yeah,
for.
thank you. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate how supportive you've been of my content so far because, it's pretty vulnerable to just share
Yeah.
very authentically and I haven't gotten yet into like necessarily sharing personal stories, but just share authentically my perspective with the world because you
Mm,
do leave yourself open to potentially,
yeah.
people not agreeing and
Right.
criticizing and that's okay, but it feels vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important for audience to know, a few things about that. One is that yes, for most times, if you get videos that has a lot of views, you get a variety, and the majority of it potentially can be negative. But we attract the audience based on what we put out. And
Right.
and I found that when you attract audiences of a certain kind, then they will respect you because you respect them. The
Mhm.
the other thing also is that the tools are there for us to control this. If we wanted to, we can delete any messages. Nobody would know, and so all these negative comments can disappear. But in my couple of years being online, I've deleted one because they mentioned guns, and
Mm,
that's
okay.
all I've done. And so most people are, like I said, the people coalesce around a certain vibe, and so I think your vibe is very positive, and so I don't think you hit a lot of that. Then the last thing is that it's actually an opportunity for us to encounter these things and learn to manage it.
Hmm.
So I hope my children don't get trolled, but I expect that I like for them as they go through life to start to learn how to deal with this, to sidestep it, to because the we live in a world now where these our vulnerabilities is being prodded at all the time.
Right.
So I think it is an opportunity. But I encourage you to keep going. And if you walk the same path I walked, then you'll find that it's a really positive one. The main thing is that you have to enjoy it because
Yeah.
it's yeah, views aren't going to come, followers aren't going to come. They come at random times and you don't know when it when it
Yeah. Well,
comes.
that's the surprise. I did this
Yeah.
90-day challenge with myself. Like, I'm just going to post and see how it goes. And the surprise for me has been that I
Mm,
enjoy it. And I
yeah.
didn't think I would enjoy making the videos and stuff. Or I didn't think I wouldn't. I just didn't know that I would enjoy it. It's a new outlet for me that I've never done before. But I
Mm,
think it's
yeah.
really wonderful, your perspective of thinking through creating an online community that you would want your children to be a part of. And I
Yes.
think that that's so honorable and also so brilliant because a lot of time, I mean, technology changes so quickly, and the world is so different now than, when we were children.
Yes.
And and if you want to, I don't have children, but I constantly think about how in the world do parents understand what children are going through these days with social media being a part of growing up now and with all of the technology. And even if you're not in social media, you have access to your friends all the time through texting and through gaming and all kinds of stuff. And it's like, for you to immerse yourself in some of this stuff, like I think it's brilliant because it will help you to understand and to guide your
Yeah.
children because you are doing it yourself too. I think that's
Yeah.
really smart.
Yeah, because it's not about the solution. Because when my children grow up, they're very young right now. So I'm looking at least 5 years before they hit any of this.
Mhm.
That the technology is going to be completely different. So the question is that it's not what solutions I create now or what type of content is that I'm on the path, and at
Right.
the time when they're there, as they slowly get more and more exposed to it, that I'm there with them, and that I like to encourage. So I have a student community that we are in contact with, that we're supporting, and I'm creating forums and communities in Discord now, and that's a different community again because as you're in the States, TikTok is a ban is imminent, and
I know.
and
I don't know
yeah,
what's going to happen.
right. And in Australia, there's a ban this year coming in for 16 people who are 16 years and under, but there's a whole community there. Where are they going to go?
Mhm.
So I think ban has a function, but it's not going to solve all the problems. So it's all continuing to evolve. And what I like to do is be open more communities where people like you and I who are and people like myself who are parents, the there's a chance to communicate with other people, at least to know that we're not alone. Just
Yeah,
to
it's such a
acknowledge.
Yeah, I think that's such an important part of humanity. I have this group of friends and we record videos every week and send them to each other, just little like update videos. It's my group of friends from university, from college. And so since it fell on New Year's Eve this week because we do it on Tuesdays, we talked about what we're grateful for from the past year, and I said, I think that every when I list off what I'm grateful for, what's underneath that, it all boils down to connection. And so I think it's so valuable to have connection and to realize that you're not alone. You're not alone in what you're going through. You're not alone. There's other people experiencing what you've experienced. And even if someone hasn't, it's still valuable to have that connection to feel like you're not alone in the world in what you're going
Yeah.
through. I think that's so important.
Yeah, I found the that social media and the connected world as we have today does two things that are really amazing, not available in the past. One, that it acknowledges that whatever you're feeling, other people that is valid.
Hmm.
So then the second thing is that you're not alone. So
Hmm.
so so that's why you know nobody can. I don't think anybody can shut it down. So therefore, it will perpetuate, and that function will keep continuing. The thing that we want to work on now is that what is after that. So
Yeah.
because it can go really negative if you get validation and then you get that you're not alone, then you can keep yourself entrenched in that, and that is
Yeah.
the negative side, the other side of having these technologies for us to keep working on more solutions and different ways of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, so I'm noticing the time and I want to be respectful of your time so you can have your day. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this, and I hope
Yeah.
that your series goes well. I'm sure we'll keep communicating because there are other avenues for different ways that we can work together.
Yeah. And thank you so much for agreeing to have this conversation with me and being um, so willing to share so authentically and to tell your story. I really enjoyed listening and hearing where the conversation went after the story.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And what I would like for you to share before we go is, if people are listening to this and are interested to see your content or hear your podcast or anything like that, where can people find you and what should they look for?
Okay, if the standard message I give is that they don't have to look because I believe in the information infrastructure and algorithms these days that if my content resonates with that person and they're on a certain platform, it will appear to them. So,
That
but
is
if they
very
really want to,
true.
yes, but if they really want to search, they can search for my name, Leong Hiew, Leong Hiew, or they can search for my company, Lifespan Education. And if they start hitting those, the content that's attached to any one of those, they will see me, and they will see a variety of different ways that I present and different things I do.
Cool. Well, thank you for what you're putting out into the world, and thank you for talking with me today.